Welcome to the XY Advisor podcast, where it's our goal to help you become the best financial advisor possible and drive the positive evolution of financial advice. Hub24 is an ASX-listed company with over $15 billion funds under management and one of the fastest growing platforms in the market. Neither a bank nor part of a bank, Hub24 focuses entirely on connecting advisors to a broad range of investment solutions for their clients. Discover why other advisors think Hub24 are the best in the market and access the benefits of choice and efficiency for you and your clients with their market-leading managed portfolio solution. To find out more, visit hub24.com.au. G'day, how's it going? What do you know? Striker like Clayton here from XY Advisor with Dean, who has flown in from Perth just for this conversation. That's no other reason, right?
In and out on the same day.
You're here for Barron's.
I am.
Barron's is an interesting thing. I don't know a lot about it, but from my understanding, it's a media organization. Is that right?
Sure is, yeah. 100-year-old publication in the States.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And their goal is to promote the best advisors in the world.
Basically, yeah. So Sterling Shea, who heads up that division of the magazine, he's a massive believer in the value of advice. So when he joined Barron's years ago, brought the ranking, it's been highly successful in the States. They're interested in elevating advice all over the world.
Awesome. Sounds like people we should know about. So maybe you can facilitate an intro. That'd be great.
Yeah, for sure.
But today what we're actually talking about is one of the interesting things is you've got broadleaf.
Yep.
And before we duck into exactly what that is, high level, there's a lot of flux in the industry right now. There's a lot of advisors leaving. There's not so many joining, but perhaps that'll change over time. Valuations are a big topic of conversation. You've got these international players that have coming in and offering quite large multiples from my limited understanding. You guys are an Aussie-based acquisition company. I'd love the conversation literally just before I got into this room with you was, what does Dean know about valuations that we don't know? Because everyone seems to think it's on the down and out, but then you've got companies like yourself or the externals from overseas that are taking an opposite view.
Yeah.
So what makes you and what makes the strategy so bullish on acquisition?
Okay, so let's break it apart into a couple of pieces. One is nothing's changed in the field of finance around the way you value an organisation. It's based on earnings. So a multiple of earnings, depending on the reliability of earnings, if it's more reliable, higher multiple and vice versa. So I think the second part to that is then breaking this industry-based valuation away from a standard method of valuing an enterprise, and you can arrive at some fairly different outcomes. I see this compression discussion, whether we are going in the direction of accountancy or legal firms down to, say, 1x revenue. The multiple of revenue idea just doesn't make any sense to us. I think that's a fundamental point. It's all about the earnings of the organisation. So do you run a successful business as measured by your ability to generate revenue at lower relative expenditure and have some left over that is worth owning as a shareholder?
So you're taking the very progressive view that financial planning companies should be valued the same way as all other companies.
Well, yeah, it's a really new idea. Exactly. We're quite proud of it. I think this really has to be central. There are companies, there are small businesses usually in our space that might be a single person with one or two people assisting them to deliver value to clients. It may make sense for them to be in a larger organisation. You start to get a different profit profile. Whether it's worth 1, 2, 3, 4 times, I think that's been artificially propped by the implicit, not explicit, buyer of last resort model. I know it does exist explicitly, but it's more been that there is that implied valuation underpinned by the big players in the market, which is obviously now gone. So we need to find another way of thinking about this, I think.
Yeah. EBITDA is, it's pretty normal out there in the world. And it always did interest me that financial planning, when I sort of got into financial services about a decade ago, it was really interesting to me that it had its own ecosystem. It had its own valuation model. It had its own revenue models, and it had its own view of acquiring clients. And that really has all been stripped back, I would say, wholesale across everything over the last couple of years. Now, people want to acquire clients, or I should say advisors acquiring clients now is much more closer to how the world has traditionally acquired clients, rather than just simply purchasing books of business and then, converting those orphans into, full member, full paying clients. So these days we're seeing, it's the same way I like to go shopping, same way you like to go shopping. Everyone likes to find information delivered in a framework that's easy to understand. You create a relationship with an expert, and then you go to that person when you need help. And it's amazing seeing so many planners are now acquiring clients in that methodology. But it's also been really amazing to see the conversation go from revenue to EBITDA.
Yeah.
And what has been, how long has Broadleaf been doing this? What's your sort of story, and how big have you guys grown?
Okay, so it goes back to our family business in Perth. My father started that in the mid-70s. Officially, the company was incorporated in 1979. Interestingly, when he started back then, it was really life insurance. And he tells a story that in his first week of starting in life insurance, all premiums for life insurance were tax deductible personally. And in that week, the government announced that they were basically killing the deductibility of life insurance premiums for individuals. And so the sky was going to fall in. And here we are. That was 1974. And so then, interestingly, he started our business because he didn't want to be told by people who had no connection with his clients, what to sell them. 1974, 1975, and then the company established in 1979. So it's interesting how these themes remain. 20 years when I started, there was this story that within 10 years there'd be half the number of advisors in the industry than there was then. So sort of 98, 99, everyone was worried about that sky falling in. And it's funny, things like that just don't eventuate. What we've done with Broadleaf has basically been born out of Gilkison Group in Perth, which is, I saw this cohort of friends and colleagues of my father have no alternative but to sell their business to a larger player. And I think there's a bit too much judgment that goes on now. Today's lens applied to what people did back 10, 15, 20 years ago, it's just not fair. So what we saw is that if you've got someone with a different profit motive who's the owner of the organisation to who's in service of clients and the clients, it's fractious. It doesn't work. There's plenty of evidence to support that perspective. So Broadleaf has the intent of keeping the businesses who keeping the ownership of the organisation in the hands of those who are directly in service of the client. So it's not a long-term ownership model. It's about actually funding out the incumbent owner and bringing in the emerging leaders and then gradually allowing them to buy back that equity over time. We think that's about a 10-year cycle. So really the birthplace is I'm an advisor. I deeply value advice. I've got 20-year connections with my clients. I grew up with this. So all I remember as a kid is that my father was a financial planner or a financial advisor, and no one knew what that was. I think the same is true still now. So, the way then to facilitate that transfer, I don't want to trivialize it, but it's actually you come to an agreement with the stakeholders that are involved, and if everyone's really got the client at the center of that, then you can find a path for it.
How many businesses have you guys acquired so far?
So we're settling on our third at the end of this week.
So it's relatively a new strategy.
It is, yeah. I mean, we've been working on it for about 4 years, and we were really patient in the way we raised our equity capital. So lots of smaller investors, and I think it was Sinek who said something along the lines of, we want to do business with people who believe what we believe, not those who just want to buy what we have.
100%.
And so we were really patient about that. When you are acquiring good businesses, I think it takes a long time to make sure there's alignment, because we want to be adding value rather than extracting value. That means supporting good business people to be good business people and practice a pretty high degree of non-interference. So we're very patient, though once you start to get a name for what you do, it's funny how the momentum builds quickly.
Yeah. Does it come with, I guess, training? Like, are you guys interested in taking a business and cutting down the costs? Do you guys have a coaching overlay to any of this, or you're literally just the mechanism, the funding mechanism?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes to both of those questions, which might seem contradictory.
Yeah.
Practice non-interference, a central belief. So there's plenty of examples where everyone talks about there will be no interference, and on day one, here's the rule book, and then everyone gets upset from there. That's not what we've done, and our reason is that we're acquiring a share in really good businesses, really well-run businesses, highly profitable. Some of the things I think we've seen are that if people are positioning for sale, the profitability looks good. Again, these aren't new ideas. So normalizing back the earnings to make sure that they're a kind of quote unquote fully funded business, that people are actually investing in the business's future. Usually that means investing in the next generation of people to come through. And so then the overlay of the coaching side of it, we've got a partnership with another Perth-based business called Adapt by Design. That partnership's called Adapt Financial. It's a digital operating system and method for thinking about succession of systems rather than succession of people, or that succession is actually about equity or ownership transfer. So in Gilkison, we've got this lovely test environment where up until the 1st of July last year, I was the 100% owner. I now own 10%. Broadleaf acquired 70, and we used that as a means to actually have two people in the business acquire 10% each. So 2 years prior to that, we'd been working on handing over decision rights, and that means, like, as a 100% equity owner, I can't outrank or outflank someone. So in the area of financial security or people, for example, there were other people in the organisation who had the final say. And so we separated it out to be that decision rights and the transfer of decision rights, which is the stewardship of the organisation, which then gives it its value, is very different to the application of your capital. And then add in the thesis that people who are in the business really want to own the business, who want to get the great value that we generate from it as owners. It's a pretty nice recipe. It's been so far not easy, but so far I think very successful in Gilkison. To think that, one of my business partners, ownership partners now. He joined us 4 years ago. He's a long-term advisor. He's young and has deep values, alignment, aspirationally wanted to be an owner, and he's an equal owner to me. And the other person started 10 years ago as our receptionist, and she runs client services. And people think that we're a bit nuts having done this, that you've got a non-advisor as an equal shareholder to myself and Chris, who are advisors in the business. But what's the difference between Ashley, who basically demonstrates in her working life a deep care and connection with our clients? Unless she does her job and her team does its job, what we talk about doesn't get executed, which devalues the whole thing. Why not allow these people to apply their capital the same way we do?
Yeah, that's a really good question. What are the people, do you have in your mind the avatar of the person who's trying to sell their business?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think characteristically it's pretty easy to say older, male, long-term owner. That's the majority. I'm very different from that in that I'm probably 20 years younger, and there's a lot of older people, my friends and colleagues, who think that I've given up too much. And of course, it fails to kind of ask and answer the question, well, what am I gaining? What are the different things that I could be gaining? We assume that we can see what the end result will be of a certain path, and we can't. So it's really about having the willingness to say, well, I believe that it can actually be more in areas that are more than the money.
What does that mean?
Well, I value what we do. I value the way we do it. If I own everything, will it continue the way I want it to? Will it ever reach aspirationally what I envision or envisage? I just don't think that's true, because there's a different degree of energetic participation, this sort of intrinsic, extrinsic motivation conversation. With Chris particularly, there's been a lot of conversations where he can't explain why it changed, but says it definitely did. So 30 June to 1 July, something flipped, and for him it changed his motivation in some way. I mean, it always worked hard, but it changed something. So that back to that avatar question, we think it's that person who's been in their business for a long time, working away, creating a perceived value that's on shaky ground. There's nervousness about that. I think part of that general characteristic is that oddly we don't take our advice in our industry, our profession. Save from your earnings. There's been a lot of people who've actually been waiting for that end capital event. That's not just in our business. I mean, in small businesses, that's a lot of people as well. Invest, and hope for the end point. What we definitely have seen, and it's not just limited to broadleaf, is when you have that older incumbent in a place of better security financially, their willingness to give back, kind of quasi-eldership style, is remarkable. They've got a lot to give and they want to. The thing that's standing in the way is the risk that they have and carry, and it's very real. So if you can change that, the way they're willing to invest themselves back into the organisation, usually they founded, is remarkable. As empirically trained leaders as well, not necessarily academically trained, and that's hard to get that empirical training. It just takes time.
100%. Yeah. The way that XY sort of looks at it is there's a brain drain happening, and we're trying to create the environment where these kind of guys can deliver back to the industry, with the way that they perceive things, and as you've said, empirically learnt, which is, it's almost it's almost like battle-hardened stories,
the war
right?
stories,
that you need to sort of keep alive for as long as possible. And then in terms of who the buyers typically are you going out and are people sort of registering, so to speak, with you guys and saying, we're looking to buy something, or is it alternatively, it's just the staff that's currently in the business?
Yeah, usually it's the staff that's in the business. That depends on the way we actually filter who we want to partner with. And it goes back to the coaching question as well. I think one of the points that most older incumbent owners are curious about and can't necessarily see a path toward is those next generation buyers. What are they going to do? What am I going to give up? Are they going to sort of blow everything up? Because usually those older incumbents hired the younger emerging leader. So it's almost parental. They see still the child, the youngster, the kid, the lack of capability, the lack of consistency, when that's often far from the truth. It might be a 10 or 15 year ago or even 5 year ago mindset. So if you can actually help them through that, and also then the younger, there's lots of younger folk who want the older folk gone. And, having come through a family business, there's plenty of times I'm sure my father wanted me gone and vice versa. There's just great value if you can facilitate a different type of conversation, because I think everyone shares one common thread, which is about delivering something tremendously valuable to clients. Absolutely. And care for clients.
Yeah. It seems silly to get rid of one or either of those viewpoints. I think the advisors that have been in the game for a long time bring a lot, just bring so much value.
Yeah.
And the advisors bring a new way of thinking. And I think it's just a matter of sort of adapting to the new world, but also not throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, and I think this sort of heretical right v wrong way of doing things, there's been tons of different ways over the years, and to say that something was just patently wrong, I think is very limiting. You may not agree with it, you may not ever do that yourself, but to sort of cease to examine it in some way or ask loads of questions about it and learn from it, it's a bit short-sighted. It's hard to judge. Maybe it's easy to judge what happened yesterday on the basis of what we think today. Maybe that's what the problem is, that it's a bit too easy just to go to a place of judgment.
100%. One of the things that we've done for as long as I can remember is attempt, it's not to say that we've always succeeded here, but attempt to sort of be impartial to a lot of business models.
Yeah.
the huge difference, I would say the huge difference is the older generation was better at sales, the younger generation is better at marketing. And what really that means is, because marketing is really only achievable in the new day and age anyway. Yeah. Like the whole idea that you can put content out onto the internet so that people can consume it and get to know you.
Yeah.
It was impossible to do back in the day. I mean, the best you could do was put a logo in a yellow page.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it's not exactly, it wasn't even an option to get good at marketing back in the day. It was billboards, it was
maybe a letterbox drop.
Yeah, literally. And so as a result of not being able to develop scalable relationships, then the other side, or the flip side of the coin, is you have to accelerate that relationship through sales techniques in person to person. So the skill was always, how do I get person from A to B in the shortest amount of time possible, because I have an hour. This is all I have, right? That's not the only way to do business anymore. It is still a way, but these days, with the internet, with social media being the way it is, and with YouTube and all that sort of stuff, I can now put podcasts, for example, or videos or blogs, or and people can now. I can have downloadable ebooks and things like that, and so people can you can send people on a journey that was never available. It just the technology didn't exist, and so I'm always cautious of looking at the past through the lens of the modern day, simply because the options weren't there.
Yeah, I think though, the things that we can actually learn when a client called, someone picked up the phone, if there was availability, there was the willingness to say, well, you're in a remote spot, or you're elderly, I'm going to get in the car and I'm going to come and see you. The old fashioned way of delivering service. Because although there's a lot of technology that's been introduced, and who knows where that's going to land, none of us can really see that, and most probably can't even conceive of what it's going to look like. Still, people want to connect with people. So although sales is usually these days kind of comes with a bit of that's a bit grubby, the fact remains that we're required to take clients from not knowing us and therefore not being able to trust us. It's not something that we've had an opportunity to develop over time, to a place where they're willing to entrust us with their life savings,
their life.
Basically, every part of their lives gets touched as a result of what we do. And we have a couple of meetings and then say, well, this is going to cost you X dollars per year, per month, whatever. Please believe in us. Please trust us. It's a massive leap of faith. So the thing that we focus on is, well, what exactly are we selling? And that's that people think at some level something's not okay. They're afraid of something, and what they want is to get to a place that they feel better. They feel okay. And that's a repeat process. And then, on the other side, marketing helps with that. Like the whole develop trust digitally.
Yeah.
That's really valid and increasingly valid, especially as client age averages really do fall. And also you look at the uptake of people age-wise on social media and the like. It's all the older people in this country, or anywhere else in the world for that matter. So having some strategy for presenting yourself in a way that allows people to develop trust before they've even met you, it makes a heck of a lot of sense. It should give an unreasonable advantage relative to what went on historically.
100%. Well, that's exactly right. It does because the way that I like to explain it is, the better your marketing process is, the smaller the gap that you need to fill with sales. And so back in the day, there was, as we just talked about, a letterbox drop was your marketing capability, right? So, the advantage of being an advisor, being able to find people that already like you and want to work with you, to sort of reflect what you were saying earlier about, Simon Sinek saying you want to work with people that reflect your values. That's now achievable. So, it's always a good thing to keep the old heads around, purely because even though they might not be fully up to speed with the marketing, the service, the ability to give safety and peace of mind, which is a huge part to stop people making bad decisions. That is one of the things that I think financial advisors find really difficult on how to articulate, and I still haven't figured it out yet, but oftentimes when I was advising, the most valuable things that I ever did as an advisor was people would come to me with ideas or suggestions or, things that they wanted to achieve. And I would sort of say back to them, well, is it the right thing to do? And a lot of the times it just wasn't. And I was able to sort of talk them out of these bad decisions. Older advisors would have seen so much of that a young advisor just couldn't even articulate.
Yeah, it's years in the chair. And I think it goes back to, also you made a comment earlier about customer acquisition. The digital presence, I think, or at least theoretically, is really important when someone is acquiring a book of clients. because it's undoubtable that that clients will feel sold. And you never can sell a client. No one owns a client. All you can transfer is the opportunity to be of service to someone.
That's a good way of putting it.
And then, whether you deliver on that or not is going to be the determinant of whether you actually get something back on the money that you've transferred to someone else for that, air quotes, asset. Really, in a business which is 100% intangible, we've got goodwill, what accountants would call goodwill. What is goodwill? It's just something that someone's built up over time. It's trust. So how do you, particularly if you're younger to an older advisor, how do you actually build that quickly? And, what you might lack in sort of the grey hair, so to speak, not me, but what you might lack in grey hair, you make up for in I get back quickly, or I'm there and answer phone calls, or I'm consistent and I'm technically a gun.
Yeah.
And there's something that someone's able to immediately rely on as an anchoring point, which then builds trust. That still, it seems to us that the most valuable way of acquiring clients is word of mouth. If people refer their friends, their family, their colleagues, and they say, hey, this person is really someone you can trust, well, most of the hard work is done. Then again, theoretically, all you're required to do is actually do what you do.
Yeah.
And that I can see that often we collectively can become distracted by that. It's all well and good to have value statements and the classic where you just walk past them in the hall, but unless you actually are able to convert your intent to an outcome for someone who's a client, it's really meaningless.
Yeah. And even with the word of mouth referral, if it makes a current client's job so much easier to refer if there is an easy digital journey. So, like, let's say I want to refer you to see my advisor, rather than me having to send an intro email, right? Oh, look, I can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But also, if I just go, hey, if you go to www.xyz.com, you can see for yourself, and then you go onto that website and be like, oh, okay, it's that person. They click on this and they get that thing, and then they watch the thing, and then it's almost like it's a risk-free referral from your existing client's point of view, because all they've done is nudged, and then your whole digital journey takes care of it for them. So word of mouth, 100%, I actually fully agree. It's just even the digital marketing stuff just supports.
100%.
In fact, one of the strategies I think works really, really, really well is if you say to your clients, hey, like any referrals or word of mouth's really helpful. And in fact, the easiest way for you to do that is if I ever email you a LinkedIn update, if you could just like it, that passive referral is just so simple, and typically they're so willing to do that,
completely.
And it gives you so much social proof, and it's so easy. It's like, how do I make it simple for my existing clients to word of mouth refer me? And using digital means is a really good way of doing that.
That's an interesting point. It's a digital version, social proof. Yeah. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, it's something, I got down to the specifics. So rather than just sort of making this like an ethereal concept, that as long as the person is happy to do that, what I would then do is actually copy the URL of my LinkedIn update and email it to them one-on-one and be like, hey, this is a thing. Is it like, if you feel comfortable, it'd be great for you to click on that and like it. And then their entire network is seeing that they're liking my stuff. And
triggers curiosity of who's in their network. I think, though, a one-on-one version of that, because I think everyone's had the experience where I say, well, I'm going to refer you to my advisor. And so I give you the name, number, contact details, and you never do anything with it because you're living your life, you're busy. I might have spotted something, so really it's my agenda, not yours necessarily. And if I can actually make a connection where there's two people digitally meeting, we've found that to be huge value, because then we will take it upon ourselves to take that load off someone, off a potential client, because they're busy. So we just do what we do. We give them a call, we send them an email, we direct them to a website, we ask them if they've seen that, we will say to them, all we want to do is make this easy. And most people say, thank goodness, I've been meaning to do this for ages, I should have done it. So we've found that to be really successful. And as you say, it's not one thing. It's almost like being ambidextrous.
Definitely.
Yeah, you need both.
Yeah, correct. I've got some questions for you regarding where you think the future of advice is. So for me, there's the whole adage, be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. And a lot of the market is fearful right now, but you're probably taking the zag to the zig approach. You guys have raised capital, you're interested in purchasing. So I've got some questions. Hopefully you've got some insights.
Yep.
Where do you see fees from super going?
Okay, so again, pretty hot topic. And I think it's difficult to be one size fits all with this, because if you put forward a question, well, what about a 32-year-old couple who've got one child and another on the way, they need cash flow help, they need insurance, they need their estate planning taken care of, they're not talking about retirement planning, they haven't accumulated their assets yet, they've got high debt levels. What's the value of advice for them? And is a source of providing that advice in terms of funding the cost of that advice, is that super? I mean, I can make a lot of sense out of that. There's a requirement for super funds to meet the rules that have been created, so it has a certain set of uses. So it's undeniably incorrect to be using super as the funding mechanism for advice holus bolus. I don't necessarily agree with that in certain instances. So where is it going to go? I don't know. There's, again, it's sort of heretical to have a position on either side, it seems, these days. It lacks good, sensible conversation, because, again, I can find a place where it could be super useful, pardon the pun, for younger people. With older clients, I mean, I think it's been the obvious target for people to charge fees for delivering very little. That's not a new idea either. That's been going on for decades. I don't agree with that either. So as long as it can be rationalised, justified, linked to value, that clients are clear in their choices, and conscious in that, I think that's going to solve a lot of things. Flimsy answer, right?
Very political. Well
deliberate.
Done.
Yeah.
Here's another one. What do you think about insurance commissions? And the reason I'm interested in these answers from you is because, obviously, like, if you've got the business model that you want to acquire and get more exposure to this industry, that's why I think it's kind of interesting to get your views on these. So, insurance commissions. Where do you think that's headed?
Well, we've not, in Gilkison, we've not charged insurance commissions for, I think it's about 15 years.
Wait, so to be clear on what that means is you haven't received any money from insurance companies to give insurance advice for 15 years?
Correct.
Wow.
So we charge fees.
Yep.
There are clients we've taken on who have existing policies that, aren't to be changed for varying reasons, where we'll refund. We've got a 41-year-old business and counting, right? So to cope with that legacy without leaving clients disenfranchised it's not trivial. So I'm not saying that we don't receive any commissions. And again, this is a good point to be coming from, because I've got people colleagues and friends who I respect highly, who have the business model where they charge fees and they accept commissions. And again, as long as the client is aware of what's going on and they understand what the end effect is for them financially, Who's to say it's the right thing or the wrong thing? I have a preference of the way I like to do things myself. People around me and in our business align with that. We've found that it's been really successful in our business. I totally accept that it's difficult, if not impossible, to run an insurance-only offering on a fee basis, and that's really because of the psychology of it. It's hard for people to overcome paying a significant amount up front to save on a monthly basis. And, that's telemarketing and, it's everywhere. It's not just in our field. Where do I think it will go? I think it will depend on the next big upset that occurs in the world, and then kind of popular policy moving us towards an outcome, and we'll be required to respond. I think that's sad. It takes away options for clients. And if we actually go through this next wave of professional development, professionalism development, I can't understand why you would just say, well, this is the wrong thing and that's the right thing, and give people the option. The one party that seems to be absent from this debate is the end client. What do you want, Mr. and Mrs. Client? What would you have? What options would you be afforded? I haven't seen a lot of that going on.
In terms of a professional year, because in order for the advice industry to continue to move forward, we're going to need to see more than, I think it was 5 new advisors joined the industry last year, something like that, on the Financial Advisor Register. So we're going to need to come up with some level of system to get this logbook done and everything like that. Is this something that you've looked at all? Do you have an opinion on it?
Firstly, I believe in ongoing education. I hear a lot of people bemoaning what they have to do. I mean, you don't have to do anything. No one's making you. And the choice is whether you want to be in this profession doing what we do professionally. It's undeniable there's a requirement or benefit to continue to learn, whether that's secondary education or CPD or whatever. I don't think many people in a new era are going to have much of a problem meeting the conditions. I think the professional year is a great idea. I mean, look at the whole, the idea of apprenticeships. You do 4 years as an apprentice
Totally.
Most of the time. And that sets people up for success in their field. I think there's huge merit in that. I think it forces the older to cease to hold so tightly the knowledge that they do possess, that they're able to transfer that in a structured rather than an unstructured way. I think the FPA have done a pretty good job in developing, and they continue to develop their model for this. One way? Is there one way? I don't know. I think if you can actually take any method and objectivize the discussion about what you're doing, why you're doing it, link it to some objective. Think about what we do professionally. It seems that we don't do this on ourselves, whether it's in the field of education or our own personal development as well. One of the things that we've done in Gilkison using the ADAPT method is to have personal pathway conversations at regular intervals, career evaluations, so people are measuring personal fit, cultural fit, professional, mentoring, financial progression, required to put a narrative to these things. Again, it brings people to an anchoring point, and they can set some goals and objectives, and then they're being tested against that. I mean, if you drift, you drift. So adding some structure that for the professional year, or if you've missed your CPD, the FPA have a questionnaire. It's sort of 6 or 7 pages about what you want to achieve, what your knowledge gaps are, what you're excited by or interested in. There's some great questions in that you can use to structure something well.
Yeah. And so I guess and the main reason I wanted to have this conversation with you is I'm pretty bullish on face-to-face financial advice moving forward. Human beings being human beings, there's just always going to be a large segment of society that wants to deal with people rather than technology.
Yeah.
And it's always good to see, at least from where I'm seated, at a time where a lot of advisors are scared, that there are business strategies out there that are saying, actually, well, if you're really scared, come talk to us, because we're not scared. And I think that's a really good message for the industry as a whole. So I guess my last sort of really specific question I'd like to ask you is, where do you see advice in 5 years from now?
I think we will have come through this post-Royal Commission almost vacuum where we find ourselves clamouring for what's right and wrong. I see this development phase of education leading us to a point where maybe, and this might be over-optimistic, we can actually arrive at a point where disclosure isn't so prominent and significant and stringent. I can easily imagine a world where if we're meeting professional standards and we're championing that, not because we're told we have to, because we want to, and we're 10, 15, 20 years out from the legislation, if there's a clear and consistent delivery of professional guidance and service, well, it diminishes the requirement for a baseline of disclosure. I can really easily see that in a 5-year period. Certainly there's going to be an exodus of the older advisors, which again, it leaves us vulnerable to inexperience. Most people under 50 these days have never been in business through a recession. And I mean sort of end of 80s, early 90s, or kind of mid-early 70s recession. That battle hardenedness that you mentioned before is missing. The technology side of it, I mean, obviously there is a strong argument for using technology, and I'm a big advocate of that. I'm also at the same time a massive believer in the face-to-face like you. I don't do the online shopping thing. My business partner Richard's quite prominent in that.
He's got an Amazon Prime account.
Oh, I don't know. It's more the iconic, I think.
Oh, right.
And so, what we're seeing is that you're going to need to use technology to improve the speed and accuracy of what you do, to rationalize and justify. And I think of, say, lifetime cash flows, just as an example. Great. A computer can do that already. If you put in some variables, they can do that without human input or, any kind of advisory intervention. What then doesn't get done is the conversation about, well, how you going, how you feeling, what matters, why does that matter, why does it matter today, will it matter tomorrow, what could change that? Those variables are really hard to capture without a human-to-human conversation. There's those people who would argue differently, but I think just like when I started and there was going to be this mass exodus of advisors and all this disruption that was going to occur, same thing, nearly 50 years ago when my father began, it was all going to change. It doesn't, and I can tell you that's not with my head in the sand. I proudly believe in what we do and the way we do it, and I don't think that it's easy to take that away. And if we're able to use technology to improve that constantly, wonderful. Where I think that will impact is that it will compress fees. So important to be thinking 5-10 years out on how can we actually deliver. Most businesses would deliver to 300, 400, 500 client families. What about 1,000? What about 10,000? How can you do that effectively, high quality, high value, en masse, because there's so many people as yet unadvised. Though I think advice will prevail.
Absolutely. Even when I was, I'm too old for this to be at high school, so I'm going to go with university. At university, the conversation was, even at that stage, less to do about access to information, but more about the management of information, because of the overwhelming nature of our access to all answers. Who are you paying to make sense of the answers you need to your situation? Health, wealth, what you want to do for a holiday. I think is the more, as I think the West is becoming very good at identifying what it is that you want to be doing with your time. Time is more valued these days. And so we're working hard, and there's a pool of money, and you've got to fit in family, hobbies, relaxation. You've got to fit a lot of these things in, a lot of tick boxes to tick. And it requires skills that an individual does not entirely have by themselves. They need to ask for advice. Once upon a time, that was sitting around a campfire asking your uncle. These day and age, you can get advice on many different things. And I think in terms of what to do with your money and those choices and where your life ends up as a result of those money choices, I think the value prop on what that is becoming more clear, not less. A lot of people are scared of this idea that technology will solve all these problems. Ain't a chance, because you're never going to look at a screen, even if it's the best graphics in the world, and feel connected.
No.
You're going to always need a person talking to you.
Yeah.
And hence why I'm really bullish on advice, and it's hence why it's really good to hear that there are other people that are bullish on advice as well.
Yeah. So Stephen Fry, the British writer and actor, he calls it option paralysis. And I think that's really true. I mean, you look at a beautiful picture on a screen and you're going to make a decision about your life savings because of that. For me personally, I feel huge value from someone saying, yep, steadying hand, yep, that's cool, it's going to work. This is why it's going to work. This is what we've considered. And again, if you get to know someone over time, you've built that trust that they know you, understand you, get you, understand your family. That stuff really matters. I see that there's no diminishing value there.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks so much for, again, flying all the way over from Perth for just this podcast. Yeah. I'm totally kidding. Best of luck. I assume if you're at the Barons tomorrow, that I assume you're potentially up for an award?
No. So
just enjoying the trip.
Yeah, supporting. They put on a great summit. There's some excellent speakers. Sterling and his team. They do a tremendous job. It's great value. So supporting him and the team. Over here to enjoy that and catch up with people and sort of deepen relationships. So
awesome. Well, I've got to learn more. I've heard a lot about these guys, so it'd be great to meet them. But thank you so much for coming on. I think what you're doing is a really good thing for the industry. And if anyone's out there and they want to reach out to you to find out more, how would they go about doing that?
Website for Broadleaf, broadleafgroup.com.au. You can check out gilkisongroup.com. Contact details are there. So, yeah.
Excellent, mate. Thank you.
Thank you very much.